Hi guys! Have you ever wondered what it truly felt like to wake up in a world where every day was a new test of survival? Where your home was a damp cave and your neighbors were giant beasts? Tonight, I'll take you on a journey far back in time, to the very edge of human memory, to a life filled with danger, discovery, and the quiet beauty of ancient days. But before we begin, if you're someone who loves slow, curious dives into forgotten worlds, tap the like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to get to know my viewers better. Imagine drifting to sleep under the same sky our earliest ancestors watched, the cool stone beneath your back, the distant crackle of a fire. For a caveman, morning arrived, not with alarms or phones, but with the gentle glow of dawn slowly painting the rough stone walls. The first thing you'd notice was the crisp air, scented with moss and earth, and sometimes, if you were lucky, the faint aroma of last night's cooked meat. You'd hear the breathing of your family nearby, all huddled close for warmth, their bodies making a living shield against the night's chill. There were no windows, just the wide, dark mouth of the cave letting in a sliver of morning light. A typical day started with a quick check that everyone had made it through the night. Every sound outside was a mystery. Was it wind, an animal, or something more dangerous? You'd rise slowly, muscles stiff from sleeping on stone, and look for the fire's embers. Keeping the fire alive was as important as breathing, especially when the world outside could freeze you in minutes. With gentle patience, you'd coax a few glowing coals into flame, using dried leaves and bits of moss. The light flickered against the walls, revealing handprints, old marks from stories told in red and black paint, reminders that you were not the first to call this cave home. Hunger came quickly. There were no stores, no pantries. Every meal was earned with sweat and risk. Sometimes you chewed on dried roots or leftover bones, saving your energy for a real hunt. The adults might gather quietly at the entrance, scanning the morning fog for danger or opportunity. Children would whisper, playing with sticks or smooth stones, inventing little games to distract from the empty feeling in their bellies. For a caveman, every sense was sharper. The distant snap of a branch, the flutter of birds, the faint scent of something new on the breeze. These were clues to food or to danger. You might join a small group, readying spears and stones, your mind already picturing the path through the forest. The forest itself was both friend and enemy. Its shadows hid berries and small animals, but also prowling predators and the threat of getting lost. Step by step, your feet learned every root and stone, moving silently to avoid startling prey. Sometimes, the group would pause to study animal tracks, bent over the marks in the mud, whispering guesses about what had passed this way and how long ago. There was a quiet language in these moments. Looks, gestures, the careful sharing of knowledge built up over countless generations. As you moved deeper into the woods, the air would grow colder, the silence thicker. A sudden flock of birds might burst from a tree, and everyone would freeze, hearts pounding, eyes searching for movement. If luck was on your side, the group would spot the soft outline of a deer in the undergrowth, or perhaps the glittering eyes of something much more dangerous. The hunt was a dance, a careful balancing of patience and speed. Sometimes you'd throw your spear and miss. Sometimes you'd chase for hours, and sometimes you'd return empty-handed, hunger gnawing deeper. But on good days, the group's effort paid off. A successful hunt meant more than just food. It was survival, safety, even joy. The return to the cave was a moment of celebration. Even the smallest catch brought excitement, as children gathered to see, and the oldest family members offered thanks in soft, grateful voices. The smell of roasting meat would fill the air, and for a little while, hunger faded into the warmth of community and shared stories. The day might end with quiet laughter, someone humming an old tune, the fire painting shadows on the cave walls. For a caveman, life was always on the edge, but there was beauty in the struggle, a peace in simply making it through another day, surrounded by those you loved. As twilight slipped across the land, the world outside the cave transformed once again. The air turned colder, thick with the scent of pine needles and damp stone, as animals began their nightly calls in the distance. Inside, the flickering firelight cast dancing shapes on the rough walls, and families huddled close, wrapped in animal hides, savoring the warmth. The soft crackle of burning wood was a comfort, a barrier between the safety of the group and the unknown dark beyond the cave's entrance. Conversation was quiet, spoken in low, gentle voices so as not to attract attention. Sometimes, the oldest among them would begin a story, their words slow and measured, painting pictures of ancient hunts, spirits in the forest, or lessons learned from seasons past. Children listened wide-eyed, absorbing every detail, knowing that these stories were more than entertainment. They were guides for survival. Warnings, dressed as legends, a way of passing down wisdom without written words. For a caveman, night was both a time of rest and a time of vigilance. The darkness hid predators, bears, wolves, or even rival clans, searching for food or shelter. It was common for someone to keep watch, dozing lightly by the fire, always ready to rouse the others at the slightest noise. Sleep came in short, broken stretches, each one interrupted by the natural rhythms of the night, or the shifting of bodies around the hearth. The cave itself was a living thing, always changing with the seasons. In the heart of winter its walls grew icy cold, and breath hung in the air like tiny clouds. During the warmer months, rainwater dripped down in steady rhythms, sometimes creating little streams that ran between beds of moss and straw. Finding the right cave was no small feat. Some were too shallow to offer real protection. Others flooded easily, or were claimed by dangerous animals. When a group found a suitable cave, it became more than shelter. It was a sanctuary, a place of memories, where every mark on the wall and every stone in the fire ring carried meaning. Over time, families would decorate their home with handprints, animal shapes, or simple symbols, each one a record of life lived in the shadow of survival. The youngest children would dip their fingers in colored clay and press them to the rock, giggling at the mark they left behind, not knowing their tiny hands might be seen by someone thousands of years later. Evening rituals varied from group to group. Some might share a communal meal in silence. Others would hum simple melodies or drum gently on hollow logs. These moments of togetherness, however brief, were a balm against the hardships of the outside world. For a caveman, every shared laugh or gentle touch was a reminder that they were not alone, that the dangers faced each day were easier to bear with others by their side. Before sleep, some would offer silent thanks to the spirits they believed watched over them, or whisper wishes for good hunting and safe passage through the night. As the last embers faded to a soft glow, the group would settle into sleep, drawing warmth from each other and from the fire's dying light. The darkness outside pressed in, filled with the noises of distant animals, rustling leaves, and the occasional sharp cry that reminded everyone just how thin the line between safety and danger truly was. In these quiet hours, dreams were shaped by the stories heard around the fire, visions of running with the herd, facing down a massive predator, or finding a hidden grove bursting with berries and sunlight. Some nights were peaceful, filled with the gentle comfort of family breathing in unison. Other nights, a sudden sound would jolt the group awake, hearts pounding, weapons grasped tight as they waited in silence for danger to pass. There was always the knowledge that tomorrow would bring the same challenges, the same hopes and fears as today. But for now, in the warmth and dim light of the cave, there was rest, a soft pause in the endless struggle for survival, a chance to dream of a safer, kinder world beyond the reach of the night. When the first pale light of dawn slipped through the cave's opening, it brought with it a gentle sense of hope, a promise that the group had survived another night. Slowly, one by one, the family would stir, stretching cold, stiff limbs and blinking sleep from their eyes. The fire would be nothing but faint ashes, a soft glow under the charred wood, and it became someone's quiet task to coax it back to life. With practiced patience, dried grass and thin sticks would be pressed close to the embers, each breath feeding the tiniest spark until flames returned, lighting up the stone walls in a warm, golden hue. Breakfast was rarely a feast, sometimes a handful of dried berries or a few scraps of yesterday's meal, chewed slowly while plans for the day formed in each mind. Children played quietly near the back of the cave, their laughter muffled by animal hides, inventing little games with pebbles and bits of string, while the adults gathered to speak in low tones, tracing patterns in the dust as they discussed where to hunt, where to look for roots and berries, how best to keep everyone safe. The world outside the cave was both breathtaking and brutal. Morning mist drifted through the trees, turning the landscape into a shifting sea of gray and green. Every shadow could hide something dangerous, but it was also a world of possibility, a place where fresh water sparkled in streams, mushrooms peeked out from beneath fallen logs, and birdsong hinted at the return of warmer weather. The hunters prepared for their day with quiet ritual, checking their tools, sharpening flint blades, and wrapping themselves in thick furs to fight off the lingering cold. Spears and axes, carefully crafted from stone and wood, were more precious than gold, handed down from one generation to the next, each carrying its own story of hunts survived and lessons learned. As the hunting party set out, their eyes scanned every inch of the ground for tracks and signs. A broken twig, a patch of trampled grass, the faint imprint of a paw. These clues told the hidden stories of animals passing through in the night. Sometimes the group would split, a few moving toward the river to try their luck at fishing, others creeping quietly through the trees in search of larger prey. Every sense was awake and alert, trained by years of practice to notice the smallest change in the world around them. For those who stayed behind, the work was no less important. Gathering edible plants was a slow, careful process, as not every berry or leaf was safe to eat. Elders would teach the younger ones which plants to pick, which to avoid, and how to dig for roots without damaging the delicate soil. Water had to be fetched from the nearest stream, often carried in hollowed gourds or animal skins. Even simple chores required teamwork and trust, for danger could come from anywhere: a sudden storm, a prowling animal, or even the collapse of a section of cave wall after a heavy rain. The rhythm of life was dictated by the world outside, by the turning of the seasons and the unpredictable moods of nature. Some days, the sun shone bright and strong, coaxing flowers from the earth and bringing the promise of new life. Other days, the sky darkened with clouds, and the cave became a refuge from thunder and cold, the family huddling together to wait out the storm. In every task, in every moment, there was a quiet understanding that survival depended on each person doing their part, sharing what they had, and learning from those who had come before. The world was harsh, but there was also beauty. A sudden burst of wildflowers along a stream, the shimmer of fish darting in clear water, the gentle comfort of a hand squeezed in reassurance after a long, difficult day. Life as a caveman was never easy, but in the spaces between fear and hunger, there was also kindness, patience, and a deep connection to the land and to each other. Throughout the gentle hours of midday, life around the cave settled into a rhythm both ancient and soothing. The sunlight would filter through the trees, scattering golden patches onto moss and stone outside the entrance, inviting those inside to step out and stretch their legs beneath the wide, endless sky. Some of the group would walk carefully along familiar paths, listening to the distant sound of running water and the songs of birds drifting on the breeze. The air was fresh, tinged with the scent of pine and wildflowers, and every breath felt new, as if the world itself was quietly encouraging them to explore. Children would sometimes chase after insects or try to mimic the calls of birds, their laughter mingling with the soft wind as they learned more about the land with each step. Others might help gather firewood, feeling the roughness of bark beneath their fingers, collecting dry branches that would later be piled near the cave to keep the evening fire strong. Occasionally, a lucky find, perhaps a patch of sweet berries or a rabbit hiding in tall grass, would be cause for a quick, whispered celebration, a reminder of how simple joys could be found in even the hardest days. As the sun climbed higher, its warmth filled the cave and pushed away the chill of the night before. Elders would share knowledge in quiet voices, showing younger members how to carve simple tools from bone or shape soft clay into vessels that might one day hold water or food. The work was slow, hands moving in steady, practiced patterns, every gesture a small lesson passed down through generations. For a caveman, these were precious moments, when the struggle to survive faded into the background and the comfort of community took its place. Sometimes, while others worked or rested, someone might add new markings to the cave wall: a painted bison, a line of red dots, a pattern of handprints arranged like a family gathering. These pictures were more than decoration. They were a record of existence, a way to say we were here to anyone who might come after. The hunters who returned early would bring stories of what they saw in the woods: tracks of large animals, signs of predators, or the sudden, thrilling sight of something new and unexplained. Their voices would grow animated as they described narrow escapes or close calls, their hands sketching shapes in the dirt as they told the tale. Sometimes the group would pause to listen, their eyes wide with the shared memory of danger narrowly avoided. Even in a world that often seemed cruel, there were moments of peace, like the quiet that fell after a meal, when everyone rested in a cool patch of shade, or the gentle laughter that followed a story told well. For a little while, the worries of finding food or keeping safe slipped away, replaced by the simple pleasure of being together. In these slow hours, hope for the future could be found in the smallest things: a new tool shaped just right, the first green shoots of spring, the promise of a full moon lighting the way home. Life was never easy, but it was rich with small victories, and every day brought a new chance to learn, to adapt, and to grow a little stronger. As afternoon faded into evening, the shadows outside the cave began to stretch long and thin, painting the world in cool blue and golden light. This was a time of transition, a gentle pause between the labors of the day and the rituals of the night. The returning hunters would gather near the entrance, their faces lined with fatigue and hope, their hands carrying the day's bounty, whether it was a bundle of wild roots, a clutch of eggs found in a hidden nest, or, on lucky days, a haunch of meat wrapped in leaves. Children would rush to greet them, eyes wide with excitement, eager to see what treasures had been brought back from the forest. Sometimes, the stories told by the fire were as valuable as the food itself. The group would settle together in a loose circle, each person sharing a little of what they had experienced. The moment a deer's shadow slipped through the trees, the sudden splash of a fish escaping from grasp, the strange pattern of stones found along a riverbank. For a caveman, storytelling was survival. Through these tales, lessons were remembered and dangers understood, while laughter and wonder kept fear at bay. Preparing for the night, the group would work together to arrange food, mend tools, and set aside anything that might be needed if trouble came. Animal hides were shaken out and spread for bedding, water was fetched and checked, and the fire was carefully tended, coaxed into a bright, steady flame. Every movement was deliberate, shaped by necessity and shared habit, and each person knew their role. When food was cooked, roasted over the fire, or boiled in stone-lined pits, the smell would fill the cave and draw everyone close. Even the smallest meal became a celebration, a reminder that today, at least, hunger would not rule the night. Sometimes, after the meal, there would be a quiet moment of thanks. The group might bow their heads or raise their hands to the sky, offering gratitude to spirits, ancestors, or simply to the land itself. In these gentle moments, surrounded by warmth and voices, the world beyond the cave seemed to fade away, leaving only the comfort of togetherness. As darkness settled in, the cave became a haven against the wild unknown. The night sounds, owl calls, distant howls, the shiver of leaves in the wind, served as a constant reminder of what lay just beyond the flicker of firelight. Some would doze while others watched, each taking their turn to keep the group safe. Sleep came slowly, drifting in on waves of fatigue and soft conversation, while the embers cast gentle shadows across the faces of those who dreamed of better days. In the hush of night, when the fire's glow was the only light in a world painted with shadows, a calm would settle over the cave and its people. The deep, steady breathing of sleeping bodies created a quiet rhythm, while a watchful pair of eyes remained open, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. Sometimes the distant howl of a wolf or the heavy steps of a wandering bear echoed through the forest, sending a ripple of tension through those resting closest to the entrance. Still, there was comfort in numbers, and the warmth of many bodies pressed together provided a shield against both fear and cold. Even as they slept, the group never truly let their guard down. Every sound or shift in the wind could be a warning, and it was this constant readiness that kept them alive through countless nights. For the youngest children, the cave at night was both a place of safety and mystery. The flicker of the dying fire made strange shapes on the walls, sometimes turning painted bison or mammoths into living shadows that seemed to dance and move with the flames. Stories whispered by the elders before bed would linger in the mind, blending dreams with old memories, tales of great hunts, lost friends, and spirits that watched over the land. If a child woke suddenly, heart pounding from a bad dream or a sharp sound outside, they would find comfort in the gentle touch of a parent's hand or the soft hush of a familiar lullaby. Sleep was a precious thing, never guaranteed, and always interrupted by the needs of the night. Some nights brought storms that battered the earth, with wind and rain, making the cave feel smaller and more vulnerable than ever. Water would seep through cracks in the stone, and those inside might shuffle closer together, wrapping themselves more tightly in furs and hides. On such nights, the group would share what little warmth they had, grateful for every dry patch and every moment of peace between claps of thunder. On calmer nights, the stars beyond the cave's mouth sparkled cold and bright, a reminder of the vastness of the world beyond their shelter. Even in darkness, there was beauty to be found. The way the fire's last embers glowed like tiny suns, the sound of a soft breeze carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, the closeness of family breathing quietly in the same space. Every night that ended safely felt like a small miracle, another page added to the story of survival, written by hands and hearts working together. When dawn finally began to chase away the shadows, the cave would slowly come to life once more. Bodies would stir, stretching away the aches of sleep, eyes blinking open to the first hints of daylight filtering through the cave's entrance. The new day was always a gift, an unwritten chapter full of challenge and promise. Before the full return of light, the group would begin to move quietly, not wanting to disturb whatever might still be lurking outside. Some would add kindling to the embers, coaxing a new flame to life, while others would begin to gather scattered tools and hides, preparing for the tasks ahead. The world outside was always changing, shaped by the moods of weather and the movement of animals, and no 2 days were ever quite the same. Yet the routine of morning, checking the sky, listening for birds, smelling the air for rain or smoke, provided a sense of stability, a way to greet whatever the day might bring with calm determination. It was in these moments, quiet and ordinary, that the strength of the group was most visible, a silent agreement to keep each other safe and make the most of another day alive in a wild, ancient world. With the first soft rays of sunlight spilling across the stone threshold, life inside the cave would stir into motion once more. The gentle bustle of morning was marked by the quiet shuffling of feet, the muted clatter of stone tools, and the low hum of voices sharing dreams or worries for the day ahead. Sometimes an elder would rise before the others, drawing shapes in the dust or humming a tune so old its meaning had blurred into comfort. The air was brisk, often chilly enough to draw everyone closer to the new fire, hands outstretched toward the small, dancing flames. Breakfast was a simple affair, each member sharing a bit of what remained from yesterday. A few dried berries, a strip of smoked meat, or sometimes just a warm drink brewed from roots and herbs. There were no complaints, only gratefulness for another morning with family and friends. The day's work began as soon as the light was strong enough to see the path outside. Groups would form by unspoken agreement, the hunters choosing their spears and checking the sharpness of flint points, the gatherers tying small baskets from woven reeds, the children following close behind, eager to help or simply to watch and learn. For a caveman, each day brought the same ancient challenge: find enough food, stay warm, keep everyone safe. And yet, there was a rhythm to it that felt almost peaceful, like a song sung quietly under one's breath. Outside, the world was fresh and alive with the sense of morning dew, crushed leaves, and earth. Birds would call from high branches, warning of the group's approach, while small animals darted away through ferns and tangled roots. The sun, though pale and often hidden behind clouds, painted the world in shades of green and gold, making the hardships of life seem for a moment less severe. The hunters moved with silent purpose, eyes sharp for signs of recent animal tracks or broken branches that marked the passage of prey. They walked paths worn by generations, their feet remembering every twist and dip in the land. Sometimes, the forest felt almost welcoming, a place of hidden gifts, a patch of wild garlic, a nest of eggs, or the rare sight of a gentle deer grazing by the stream. But always, just beneath the surface, was the awareness that danger could come in an instant. For the gatherers, each step was careful and patient. Berries, nuts, edible roots, and medicinal herbs were treasures hidden in plain sight, waiting for the practiced hands that could tell the difference between nourishment and poison. Sometimes, a child would proudly return with a handful of something bright and unfamiliar, only for an elder to gently shake their head and explain why it must be left behind. Every lesson was a thread in the fabric of survival, woven day by day, season by season. By midday, the groups might cross paths, calling out softly to one another, sharing news of what they'd found, or warnings of a recent predator nearby. The world, vast and wild, felt a little smaller when voices echoed through the trees, reminding each person that they were never truly alone. The journey home was quieter, a time for reflection, for carrying burdens and memories back to the safety of the cave. In these peaceful, simple routines, there was comfort, an ancient, steady hope that tomorrow would come, and with it, another chance to greet the dawn. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, the forest around the cave shifted in mood, the light growing softer and shadows stretching long between the trees. The returning groups would arrive one by one, their steps a little heavier after hours spent searching and gathering. Faces brightened at the sight of familiar figures by the entrance, and quiet greetings were exchanged. A hand on a shoulder, a gentle nod, a smile that said more than words ever could. Some brought small triumphs, a bundle of herbs with a soothing scent, a pouch of nuts, or a fish caught with careful patience. Others returned empty-handed, but were met with understanding, for everyone knew that fortune in the wild was always fleeting. As baskets were unpacked and discovery shared, the air filled with the sound of voices recounting the day's adventures. Stories were told of animals glimpsed through the trees, or of the moment someone stumbled upon a stream lined with brilliant green moss. There were quiet laughs at near misses, a rabbit darting just out of reach, berries picked only to be dropped when a startled bird burst from the bush. Even disappointments became tales to remember, reminders that every day brought its own lessons and surprises. Preparing for the evening, the group worked together, their movements practiced and familiar. Water was fetched from the nearest stream, firewood gathered and stacked near the entrance, and the youngest members sent to watch for smoke or shifting winds. Meals were prepared simply, with roots and herbs added to whatever meat or fish had been found, the ingredients mixed with skill and care in pots blackened by years of use. The smell of food drifted on the air, drawing everyone close to the warmth of the fire as dusk crept in. Before the meal, it was common to pause, offering a moment of thanks, not in grand words, but in the shared silence of heads bowed, hands joined, the soft comfort of gratitude felt rather than spoken. As night fell, the world outside faded into darkness, and the cave glowed with the gentle light of the fire. Shadows danced on the walls, tracing ancient shapes painted long ago, and the soft murmur of conversation wrapped around the group like a blanket. After eating, some would rest, their bodies relaxing after a long day's work, while others tended to small chores, mending a broken basket, sharpening a blade, or quietly rocking a restless child. These routines, steady and familiar, brought peace to the end of each day. Sometimes, as the flames burned low, an elder would begin a story, their voice rising and falling in the dim light. The children would gather close, eyes wide, as tales of past winters, great hunts, or the spirits of the land were spun from memory and imagination. The words would linger long after the story ended, settling gently into the dreams of those drifting toward sleep. Night in the cave was a time of rest, but also of quiet reflection, a reminder that even in a world full of danger and uncertainty, there was always comfort to be found in the presence of others, and hope waiting to bloom with the coming dawn. Night deepened, settling heavily over the land, as the last of the day's embers glowed in the center of the cave. The world outside was silent except for the distant hoot of an owl and the quiet shuffle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. Within the cave, families drew closer together, wrapping themselves tightly in animal skins and feeling the gentle press of others' warmth against their backs. Sleep came slowly, drifting in and out as the fire faded and the cool air seeped into every corner. Some slept with one eye half open, their minds alert for the slightest sound, a branch snapping, the hush of paws on dirt, or the sudden rush of wind that signaled an approaching storm. In these hours, dreams and reality mixed together, weaving ancient fears and old memories into a tapestry as wild as the land itself. The elders, who had lived through many seasons, slept lightly, always ready to rouse the group if danger approached. Their presence brought a calm assurance, a sense that no matter what the night held, wisdom would guide the way. Children sometimes woke with a start, frightened by shadows or strange sounds, but a gentle touch or a soft song would soothe them back to sleep, the comfort of family all around. For the adults, rest was a necessity, but true relaxation rarely came. Their thoughts often wandered to tomorrow's needs, where food would be found, how tools could be mended, or what weather the dawn might bring. In the silence, the mind returned to small details, the feeling of cool stone under a hand, the taste of sweet berries on the tongue, the soft flutter of a bird's wing at sunrise. The cave itself, though rough and cold, felt alive, its walls a sheltering embrace that held the stories and secrets of countless generations. As the night stretched on, time seemed to slow, the boundaries between hours blurring until only the rise and fall of breath, the shifting of bodies, and the faint glow of dying embers marked its passing. Sometimes, a sudden noise would jolt the group awake, a howl too close, the crash of rocks outside, or the low growl of a passing beast. Instantly, everyone became still, listening with every part of their being, hearts pounding as they waited for the danger to move on. If all remained quiet, slow relief would settle in, and sleep would return in fits and starts, until the first hint of gray light touched the edge of the sky. Morning was always a quiet blessing, a soft reward for making it through another long night. As the darkness lifted, the group would rise, stretching sore muscles and sharing tired smiles. The tasks of the new day would begin again, rekindling the fire, fetching water, checking for fresh tracks outside the cave's entrance. Every day was a continuation of the one before, and yet, in each sunrise, there was hope, a belief that, together, they could meet whatever the wild world brought and find peace in the rhythm of another day. With the return of daylight, the group began to stir, each member waking at their own pace, lulled from dreams by the familiar sounds of morning in the cave. A few soft words, a cough, the gentle thump of a child's heel against packed earth. These small noises signaled safety, proof that another night had passed without disaster. The air was cold, but fresh, carrying with it the earthy sense of moss and yesterday's ashes. Most mornings, someone would carefully poke the fire, coaxing the last embers to life with kindling gathered days before. As the flames grew, a gentle glow filled the space, warming cold fingers and drawing sleepy faces close. The group would share whatever food was left, sometimes little more than a handful of seeds or a scrap of dried meat, while talk turned quietly to plans for the day. Who would search for water? Who would hunt? Was anyone feeling strong enough to venture farther, to find new places for food and shelter? Every task was decided with patience and respect, guided by the wisdom of the oldest voices and the curiosity of the youngest. On good days, there was laughter as a child tried to mimic the elders' serious tone or invented new games with sticks and stones. The world outside beckoned, alive with the promise of sunlight and discovery. The hunters would slip into the forest in pairs, careful not to startle the animals whose tracks they followed. Each step was quiet and intentional, the sound of breathing and the soft crunch of leaves marking their progress through the woods. Those who remained behind would gather what they could: edible plants, smooth stones for tools, or dry branches for the fire. Sometimes they found gifts left by the land itself: a bird's feather, a cluster of wild mushrooms, the delicate bones of a small animal. These treasures were carried back to the cave, their value measured not in wealth, but in usefulness, and the quiet pride of having found something new. By midday, the cave would fill again with voices and movement, each person returning with a story to tell. Some days were marked by success: a basket full of berries, a rabbit caught in a well-set trap, or the joyful news that no signs of predators had been seen nearby. Other days, the mood was quieter. Hope mixed with worry as supplies ran low and memories of hardship pressed in. Yet even then, there was a steadiness to the way the group worked together, a deep trust built from shared experience, and the knowledge that no challenge could be faced alone. As the day wore on, the cave itself felt like a living part of their story, a place that changed with the seasons, echoed with laughter and song, and offered shelter from both storm and sorrow. In its cool, protective shadow, life carried on, steady and strong, weaving each new memory into the long, unbroken thread of their existence. By afternoon, the cave bustled with quiet energy as the day's work continued, each person falling into their familiar roles, Outside, the sun cast shifting patterns through the leaves, and the world felt momentarily gentle, the sounds of birdsong and the soft hum of insects weaving a backdrop for the steady rhythm of survival. Some gathered near the entrance, repairing tools with nimble fingers, chipping flint into sharper blades, tying loose sinew around the ends of wooden spears, or smoothing rough handles with pieces of sandstone. The children watched closely, sometimes allowed to help, learning the patient craft that would one day be theirs to master. For the women and elders, gathering was a constant process. They moved along the trails close to the cave, baskets in hand, eyes sharp for edible roots, seeds, or hidden patches of berries among the undergrowth. Every discovery was met with quiet satisfaction. A nod or a smile passed between them before adding the find to the communal pile. Teaching happened not through grand lessons, but in the small acts repeated each day. A gentle correction here, a guiding hand there. Stories told in soft voices as fingers worked and eyes searched the earth. In the heat of midday, the younger children might splash at the edge of a stream, their laughter echoing over the water while older siblings kept a protective watch. Sometimes a game would spring up, a race to spot the brightest flower or the most unusual stone, turning the labor of living into moments of joy. Life's dangers were never far, but in these hours, the group could almost forget the constant need for caution, could simply be present in the easy company of family and friends. Back in the cave, food was prepared with care. Roots and greens were chopped with sharpened stones, and what little meat they had was divided evenly, every scrap valued. Cooking was a slow process, meat roasted on wooden spits, or stews simmered in clay pots set at the edge of the fire. The smells drifting through the cave would spark hungry conversation, the children's eyes wide with anticipation as they waited for the first taste. While the meal cooked, stories filled the time. Some true, others exaggerated with every retelling. These tales wove the group together, keeping alive the memories of old hunts and close escapes, of bitter winters survived, and the rare, golden days when food was plentiful and the world felt kind. The oldest voices carried the weight of experience, sharing warnings about poisonous plants, hidden pitfalls in the forest, or the way weather changed when certain birds returned in the spring. With every story, knowledge passed from one generation to the next, building the foundation for tomorrow's survival. As the sun dipped lower and the shadows stretched, the group prepared to gather for their evening meal, the day's work winding down. The comfort of a warm fire and the nearness of loved ones was a gift, a shield against whatever the night might bring. In these quiet moments, surrounded by laughter and the steady glow of embers, the world outside seemed less frightening, and hope for another peaceful night began to grow. As evening crept closer, the small community found themselves drawn together by the anticipation of the night's meal, each person settling into a comfortable spot near the fire. The cave was alive with gentle sounds, the soft murmur of conversation, the crackle of flames licking at dry wood, and the rhythmic tapping of stones as last-minute repairs were made to a tool or weapon. The day's efforts were spread out for all to see: bundles of fresh leaves, a cluster of mushrooms, strips of meat glistening in the warm light. Everything was shared, each portion handed out with care, so that no one would go hungry. Children leaned against parents, eyes bright with excitement as food was passed around. The taste of the first bite, even if small, brought comfort after the long hours spent searching and working. Between mouthfuls, stories continued to flow, tales of the day's adventures or memories from earlier times, their details shaped and reshaped by each retelling. In this way, the group was not just fed but bound together, their spirits lifted by the simple act of sharing and remembering. As the last scraps of food disappeared, someone would tend the fire, pushing glowing embers into a tight circle and adding another branch to keep the flames alive. Darkness grew outside, pressing against the mouth of the cave, and the warmth inside became all the more precious. For a moment, the world felt safe, the boundaries of the cave holding back the unknown, while the light and laughter within promised that, at least for tonight, they belonged to one another. Sometimes, a quiet would settle over the group as night deepened and energy waned. A few would stretch out on their beds of grass and skins, while others watched the fire, lost in thought. It was in these silences that the mind would wander, to memories of lost loved ones, to hopes for better days, to the mystery of the stars flickering just outside the shelter. Even after the longest, hardest days, there was beauty to be found in these quiet moments. The feel of a child's head resting on a shoulder, the soft breath of sleep beside you, the gentle hush that signaled another day's survival. These were treasures just as important as any food or tool. Occasionally, the elders would offer a final word of guidance or reassurance, reminding everyone to stay close, to trust the group, to remember that they were stronger together than apart. These words were a shield, protecting each member against loneliness and fear as night pressed closer. Outside, the world was never truly still. Wind sighed through the trees, water trickled in a nearby stream, and animals prowled beneath the cover of darkness. But inside the cave, wrapped in the warmth of fire and family, there was peace, a small and precious victory in a life defined by challenge and change. And so, as the last embers faded and the cave settled into sleep, the group rested in the comfort of each other, their dreams carrying them forward to the promise of a new day. The deep hours of night often brought a stillness that seemed almost sacred, as if the world itself paused to breathe and listen. Yet even in this quiet, the group remained vigilant. One or two adults would take turns keeping watch near the entrance, their eyes scanning the darkness for signs of movement, their ears tuned to every sound that filtered in from the wild. The flicker of the fire, though comforting, was kept small so as not to draw the attention of larger animals or unwelcome visitors. Every now and then, a night breeze would stir the smoke, carrying it deeper into the cave, mingling with the earthy scents of moss and old ashes. The watchers felt the weight of responsibility, but were comforted by the knowledge that their presence let the others rest without fear. Even those asleep were never truly lost to the world. Sleep came in waves, light and restless, broken by the snap of a twig outside or the distant call of a night bird. Dreams in such times could be vivid, memories of summer hunts, visions of fields blooming with wildflowers, or the echo of voices now gone. For the elders, these dreams were often bittersweet, reminders of both loss and hope, the past mingling with the present in the hush of the cave. Children, tucked safely between parents and siblings, sometimes whimpered or mumbled in their sleep, comforted quickly by a gentle pat or the warmth of a familiar hand. The rhythm of the night was shaped by the slow passage of stars overhead, and by the cycle of the fire burning down and being quietly rebuilt. The watchers, fighting sleep, sometimes hummed old melodies to keep themselves alert, their voices soft and low, blending with the wind outside. These songs, sung for countless generations, carried the weight of tradition and the promise that morning would come again. In these late hours, thoughts often turned inward. Some wondered what lay beyond the next hill, or what other groups might be doing in caves hidden far away. Was their life so different, or did the same rituals, hopes, and fears shape every group beneath the vast, cold sky? These unspoken questions became a kind of comfort, a reminder that the story of survival was shared, even if the faces were different. Eventually, as the darkness began to fade, and the air chilled further, the first stirrings of dawn crept into the cave. The watchers would rouse the others gently, a hand on a shoulder, a quiet word, signaling that the hardest part of the night had passed. Faces emerged from blankets and furs, blinking in the dim light, grateful for another morning. The fire would be fed with new wood, its flames growing brighter, and the cave slowly filled with the sounds of life returning, yawns, whispered greetings, the shuffle of feet, and the promise of another day spent together in the endless rhythm of existence. Morning's arrival always brought a gentle sense of renewal, the faint light seeping into the cave and painting the stone walls with soft gold and gray. The air, cool and fresh, stirred with each movement as members of the group stretched and yawned, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Hunger was often the first sensation, a dull ache in the belly that reminded everyone of the work ahead. Even before speaking, hands reached for whatever scraps of food had been set aside. Maybe a few shriveled berries, a bit of smoked meat, or a piece of dried root saved from the previous day. These modest rations were shared without complaint. The oldest and youngest served first, each bite a small comfort before the labors to come. As the fire was coaxed back to life, its warmth spread through the cave, inviting everyone to gather close for a few quiet moments of togetherness. Planning for the day happened naturally, in soft voices and shared glances. Who would set out to hunt? Who would search for edible greens? Who would stay behind to care for the very young or mend what had been broken? There was a gentle wisdom to the way tasks were chosen, strength and skill balanced by age and need, every role as valuable as the next. Children, eager to prove themselves, would sometimes plead to join the hunters or help with chores. Their enthusiasm met with smiles and reminders that patience and learning were just as important as bravery. As the sun climbed higher, those heading into the forest prepared carefully. Spears and slings were checked, baskets slung across shoulders, and a last handful of water gulped before stepping out into the wild. The world beyond the cave was ever-changing, familiar paths overgrown with new growth, animal trails washed away by rain, and the air filled with the scent of pine, earth, and the promise of something undiscovered. Every venture was a risk, a dance between hunger and danger, between the possibility of return and the threat of loss. But fear was met with resolve, each member of the group carrying with them not just the tools of survival, but the hope and faith of those who waited behind. For those who stayed at the cave, the day was spent in a steady rhythm of chores and care. Skins were scraped and cleaned, tools sharpened, and fires tended with practiced hands. The youngest played under watchful eyes, turning bits of bone and wood into pretend tools, learning through mimicry and gentle correction. Elders sat in patches of sunlight near the entrance, sharing quiet stories or humming the old songs that linked generations together. These moments, simple, repetitive, but filled with meaning, were as essential as any hunt, weaving the fabric of daily life and reminding all that survival was a shared journey. As the day unfolded, the group found strength in each other and in the steady, unspoken promise that, together, they could face whatever the wild world brought their way. The sun's steady climb through the sky brought with it a gentle warmth, casting shifting shadows across the cave entrance and lighting the way for those who had ventured into the wild. The hunters moved through the forest in careful silence, senses sharpened by necessity and years of practice. Each step was measured, avoiding snapping twigs or rustling undergrowth, so as not to startle the creatures they hoped to find. Their eyes searched for the faintest clue, a paw print in soft earth, a tuft of fur caught on a branch, the subtle bend of grass that hinted at recent passage. Sometimes, the forest felt alive with secrets, every sound and movement part of an ancient conversation between hunter and hunted. When a promising track was found, the group would huddle for a moment, whispering plans or exchanging quick gestures, relying on a shared language that needed no words. Patience was as vital as courage. Sometimes the day's hunt meant hours of slow pursuit, the reward uncertain until the very last instant. There were days of success, a rabbit flushed from its hiding place, a bird brought down with a well-aimed stone, or, on rare occasions, the thrilling discovery of a deer grazing in a sun-dappled clearing. In those moments, Joy surged through the hunters, not just for the meal it promised, but for the knowledge that their family would sleep with full bellies that night. For every triumph, though, there were just as many disappointments. Animals could be elusive, vanishing into the undergrowth with barely a trace. Sometimes the group returned with little or nothing, faces marked by fatigue and a hint of worry, but always greeted with understanding by those who waited at the cave. There was never blame, only a shared sense of purpose, and a quiet determination to try again tomorrow. While the hunters roamed, those who remained at the cave shaped the day in quieter ways. Water was fetched from distant streams, requiring careful trips through uneven terrain and a constant watch for predators. Edible plants, nuts, and roots were gathered under the dappled shade of ancient trees. Everything found was brought back and carefully examined by the elders, who possessed the knowledge to distinguish nourishing food from hidden danger. These teachings, passed down with patience, ensured that even the youngest learned what to pick and what to leave untouched. Sometimes, unexpected dangers arose: a sudden change in weather, a snake glimpsed in tall grass, or a distant roar that sent everyone scurrying to the safety of the cave. In those moments, instincts took over, and the group drew close, trusting in the strength of their bonds to see them through. As afternoon stretched toward evening, the return of the hunters was met with anticipation and relief. Stories were shared, laughter mingled with sighs of exhaustion, and the day's challenges faded into the comforting routine of preparing a simple meal. The quiet pride of survival filled every heart, and as the shadows lengthened, hope for tomorrow grew a little stronger. As the day faded into dusk, the sky above the cave glowed in shades of orange and lavender, the last rays of sunlight painting the world in gentle, shifting hues. The group gathered close to the fire, each member settling into their usual place, feeling the comfort of familiar faces and the steady warmth that held back the chill of night. The evening meal was a quiet celebration, every bite savored, no matter how simple. The older children helped portion out the food, learning the careful balance of fairness and necessity, making sure that the youngest and oldest ate first. The aroma of roasting meat and herbs mingled with the smoky air, drifting out into the darkness and tempting the noses of both people and unseen animals lurking nearby. Conversation was softer in the evenings, the energy of the day giving way to a gentle tiredness. Stories flowed more freely now, voices weaving tales of the past and dreams for the future. Someone might recount a daring chase through the woods, or describe a strange animal spotted near the river, their words painting pictures on the stone walls for everyone to see in their mind's eye. The youngest would listen, wide-eyed, absorbing every detail, the lesson hidden in each tale as important as the entertainment itself. Sometimes, an elder would speak of days long gone, of ancestors whose bravery had become legend, their actions remembered and honored, in every hunt and every meal shared. These stories, told over countless nights, were the true heart of the group's memory, a living thread that connected generations. The firelight flickered and danced across the faces of those gathered, highlighting moments of laughter, thoughtful frowns, and the peaceful stillness that came as sleep crept closer. Some members of the group tended to small tasks, even as darkness deepened, mending a basket, sharpening a blade, or braiding a length of cord. These quiet rituals brought a sense of stability, a way to keep worries at bay and ensure that tomorrow would start with a sense of order. For the children, bedtime was marked by gentle lullabies, sung in soft voices that echoed off stone and soothed restless minds. Parents would stroke their children's hair or rub circles on their backs, easing them into dreams filled with imagined hunts, sunlit meadows, and the ever-present comfort of family. Outside the cave, the world was alive with mystery and danger, the sounds of night a constant reminder of how thin the barrier between safety and wildness truly was. But within the circle of firelight, there was peace, a fragile but precious shield against the unknown. As sleep claimed one person after another, the cave became quiet except for the crackle of embers and the slow, steady breathing of those resting together. One or two adults remained awake, keeping watch at the entrance, their eyes fixed on the darkness beyond. In those hours, hope was a quiet thing, wrapped in the promise of another dawn, and the steady heartbeat of a life lived together, day by day, night by night. The deep night settled slowly, wrapping the world in velvet darkness and muffling all sound beyond the faint crackle of the fire. Those on watch shifted positions quietly, eyes scanning the cave mouth for movement, listening for the telltale rustle of leaves or the distant snap of a twig that might mean danger. Inside, sleep came in waves, restless and light, the weight of instinct never fully loosening its grip. Children whimpered in their dreams, sometimes murmuring the names of family or animals from stories told before bed, their small bodies curled close to parents and siblings. Even in sleep, arms would reach out, finding a hand or shoulder in the darkness, reassured by the familiar touch. The stone floor was unforgiving, and bodies ached with the chill, but the warmth of many pressed together made even the longest night bearable. For the watchers, the night was a time of memory and contemplation. They thought about hunts from their youth, friends who had moved on or been lost, and the changing world that shifted with each season. Sometimes they would whisper quietly to one another, sharing hopes for the future, a successful hunt, a safe journey, the possibility of children growing strong and wise. The darkness was deep, but not empty. Outside, the world moved in its own rhythm. Owls glided silently between trees, foxes slunk through undergrowth, and deer, sensing safety in numbers, gathered in distant clearings beneath the moonlight. Occasionally, the sound of something larger, a bear or wolf, would drift in on the wind, sharpening every sense and reminding the group how fragile peace could be. When these threats drew too close, the watchers would stoke the fire, sending sparks into the air as a silent warning to whatever lurked nearby. There were nights when rain drummed on the stone above, seeping in cool rivulets down the cave's walls. In those times, the group would shift and huddle closer, pulling hides tighter and murmuring comfort until the storm passed. Nature's fury, both beautiful and terrible, was simply another part of life, one to be respected, endured, and, when possible, outlasted. The slow creep of dawn was always a relief. As the darkness faded, faces emerged from sleep, eyes blinking in the soft gray light that promised a new beginning. Children were the first to rise, stretching stiffly and giggling as they shook the dreams from their heads. The adults moved more slowly, checking the fire, peering outside for signs of trouble, and counting each member with a silent prayer of gratitude. Another night had been survived, the cave filled with the gentle chaos of morning, quiet chatter, shuffling feet, and the low hum of plans forming for the day ahead. In the small victories of survival, there was joy, and in the presence of each other, a sense of peace that could not be broken by even the wildest night. With the first blush of morning, the routine of life began anew, the boundaries of the cave glowing softly in the rising sun. There was comfort in the rhythm, each person waking, stretching, and gathering around the newly stoked fire, eager for warmth and company after the long hours of darkness. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, promising both challenge and hope. As breakfast was shared, a few roots, some dried meat, maybe a handful of nuts, conversation returned, gentle and low, the sounds of voices mingling with the steady crackle of flames. Today's plans were shaped by the needs of the group and the subtle wisdom of experience. Elders, eyes keen from years spent reading the forest and sky, would quietly suggest who might hunt, who should gather, and who would remain at the cave to teach or care for the youngest. Every role mattered, each task a vital part of the whole, and even the smallest members were given a chance to help. For the hunters, preparation was both ritual and necessity. They checked the sharpness of stone blades, tightened sinew wrappings on spearheads, and tested the balance of slings and throwing sticks. Sometimes, a quiet moment was spent recalling the best paths through the forest or the place where fresh animal tracks had last been seen. The forest, familiar yet always changing, awaited them with its tangled shadows and ancient secrets. For the gatherers, the day promised its own adventure. They ventured out in small groups, baskets on their backs, eyes sharp for edible shoots, wild onions, berries hidden in brambles, or the telltale shape of mushrooms beneath fallen leaves. Elders would point out dangerous plants, teaching the younger ones to avoid their poison by smell and color, turning every outing into a lesson in survival. The youngest children remained near the cave, playing under watchful eyes, mimicking adults by pretending to dig, gather, or throw imaginary spears. Laughter rang out as games unfolded, races with pebbles, contests to build the tallest pile of sticks, songs invented on the spot and forgotten as quickly as they began. These moments, though simple, were as important as any hunt, building trust and confidence in the youngest members of the group. As the sun climbed higher, the heat grew, and the world outside shimmered with energy. The hunters melted into the shadows of the forest, footsteps soft and careful, each sense tuned to the smallest sign, a broken twig, the sudden silence of birds, the flash of movement in the undergrowth. For hours, they tracked, watched, and waited, patience their greatest tool. The gatherers, meanwhile, combed the clearings and creek beds for anything of use, sharing stories and advice as they worked. When someone found a rare treat, a patch of wild honey, a fat grub, or a hidden spring, shouts of delight carried through the trees, drawing others to share in the discovery. These small triumphs, collected bit by bit, made the difference between hardship and comfort. By midday, the groups would begin to return, sunburned and tired but hopeful, their baskets heavier than when they left, their hearts lifted by the knowledge that, for another day, the group would have enough. In these simple exchanges, food for laughter, stories for safety, life continued, shaped by the wisdom of tradition and the quiet, enduring bond of community. By the time the sun hung high overhead, heat pressing gently against the earth, the cave once again became a hub of soft, purposeful activity. Returning hunters and gatherers were greeted with quiet joy, their faces smudged with dirt and sweat, baskets filled with whatever bounty the land had offered. Each arrival was a small celebration, children running to meet their parents, elders peering into baskets with approving nods, the gentle hum of voices recounting the morning's adventures. Sometimes there was a tale of narrow escape, a hunter pausing as a boar crashed through the undergrowth, or a gatherer jumping back from the sudden slither of a snake hidden beneath a leaf. These stories, shared over midday meals, were lessons in vigilance as well as courage, each one quietly woven into the fabric of memory. The midday meal itself was simple but deeply satisfying. Strips of meat, gently roasted over embers, were shared alongside greens, nuts, and roots carefully divided among the group. Sometimes, a rare treat, a bit of honey or a clutch of eggs, was passed around, each person savoring their bite as if it were a feast. Conversation at these meals was never hurried. Every voice was heard, and every story mattered. In the shade near the cave entrance, elders took time to examine and repair tools. Flint blades dulled by morning work were sharpened anew, spear points retied, and broken handles lashed together with sinew and plant fiber. Children watched, fascinated by the careful skill required, and older ones were sometimes trusted to help, their hands guided with patient encouragement. In this way, knowledge flowed naturally, each small lesson preparing the next generation to face the world beyond the safety of the firelight. As the hottest hours of the day passed, the group often found moments to rest. Some stretched out on the cool ground inside the cave, letting tired muscles relax, while the soft drone of insects drifted through the air. Others took the opportunity to tell stories or hum old songs, voices low and soothing, offering comfort and connection. The walls of the cave, decorated with handprints and painted animals, glowed in the filtered light, silent witnesses to countless generations who had laughed, mourned, and dreamed within their shelter. These painted marks were more than simple art. They were acts of hope and remembrance, a silent promise that the lives lived here would not be forgotten. The afternoon was often spent preparing for the next night. Hides were cleaned and stretched, water was fetched and boiled, and the fire was tended with practiced care. Every task, no matter how small, was done with the knowledge that survival depended on each member of the group doing their part. As shadows lengthened and the heat faded, anticipation grew for the return of those still out in the forest. Every evening brought the hope of reunion, of another day safely behind them, and another night to be faced together, hearts steady, and spirits strong beneath the gathering stars. As afternoon stretched toward evening, the golden light filtered through the trees and fell gently across the entrance of the cave, bringing a sense of calm after the long, busy day. Families regrouped, the returning footsteps of hunters and gatherers echoing quietly, each arrival met with relief and gratitude. The cave itself, cool and shadowed, welcomed them home, a sanctuary from the unknown and the wild, a place where every stone and painted mark told the story of survival and belonging. The air was alive with the mingled scents of earth, smoke, and food, each one a subtle comfort. Sometimes, someone would discover a fresh spring bubbling nearby, or stumble upon a clutch of eggs hidden in the undergrowth, small reminders that the land could still offer unexpected gifts. These finds were celebrated by all, their value reaching far beyond their simple nourishment. Evening preparations unfolded with gentle routine. The day's harvest and catch were carefully divided, older hands guiding younger ones in the art of fairness. Meat was roasted on sharpened sticks or simmered in clay pots, while roots, herbs, and greens were added to the meal, their flavors blending into something greater than the sum of their parts. Children helped where they could, learning to wash food in clear water, to watch the fire, or to shape leaves into makeshift bowls. The cave filled with the soft sounds of conversation and laughter, the stresses of the day fading into the security of shared ritual. As the meal was prepared, elders sometimes called for a pause, a moment of silence in which each person could offer thanks in their own way. Heads bowed, hands joined, hearts stilled. The group found comfort in the knowledge that they had made it through another day together. This gratitude was not formal or forced, but a living habit, rooted in the truth that survival was never guaranteed, and every victory, no matter how small, was worth honoring. When it came time to eat, there was no rush. Food was passed around the circle, each member taking just enough and leaving plenty for the next. Bites were shared with laughter, and sometimes a song would rise, the words lost to memory, but the melody echoing softly among the stones. These moments of connection, built in the glow of firelight, were as nourishing as the meal itself. Afterward, as the last scraps were gathered and the fire tended, the group settled in for the night. Some listened as an elder spun a new story or retold an old favorite, their words weaving a spell of comfort and wonder. Others busied themselves with quiet tasks, mending a tear in a hide or rubbing sore feet, each gesture a small reassurance that life would go on. The darkness outside crept closer, but inside, surrounded by family and warmth, fear faded and hope lingered. As night descended, the cave became a cradle of dreams, holding safe the memories and promises of those who called it home. As the last colors of sunset faded into night, the cave glowed with a soft, welcoming light, firelight dancing across ancient paintings and the familiar faces gathered nearby. The sense of peace that settled over the group in these hours was deep and quiet, a relief after the uncertainties of the day. Everyone found their place in the circle, some reclining on animal skins, others sitting cross-legged, knees drawn close, hands resting in their laps. It was a time for listening, for simply being together and letting the warmth of family and community seep into tired bones. Outside, the wind carried the voices of the forest, distant calls of owls, the rustle of branches, the hush of unseen creatures moving through the dark. Yet inside the cave, the air was gentle, the walls holding back the night and all its dangers. For a while, the ordinary world receded, replaced by the gentle rhythm of voices and the soft harmony of a song, hummed without words, that every child knew by heart. Elders sometimes spoke of the stars, how they watched over the earth like ancient eyes, silent and wise. Children looked to the cave mouth, searching for a glimpse of that faraway light, and dreamed of worlds beyond the shadows. In these moments, curiosity was encouraged, questions welcomed. What lay beyond the great river? Why did the seasons change? Where did the spirits go when the fire burned low? The elders would answer patiently, weaving truth and legend together, never quite separating what could be known from what must simply be believed. For the youngest, these stories were a kind of magic, shaping dreams and planting seeds of wonder that might one day grow into courage or wisdom. With the meal finished and the chores done, the group found time for small comforts. A child would climb onto a parent's lap, soothed by a gentle song or the slow, steady movement of a hand stroking hair. Friends leaned against each other, sharing body heat, letting laughter and teasing soften the memories of hard days. Sometimes, the oldest members fell silent, eyes distant as they remembered those who were gone. Friends lost to time, relatives whose names were still spoken at the fire, their stories etched into memory and stone. Sleep came in its own time, slow and irresistible. The fire was banked for safety, its glow dim but constant, a beacon in the darkness. The night might bring dreams, sometimes peaceful, sometimes troubled, but always colored by the knowledge that here, in this cave, there was shelter and love. Those who stayed awake through the first hours of darkness watched over the others, their eyes heavy but alert, their presence a silent promise that nothing would be allowed to harm the sleeping. Outside, the world turned on, seasons shifting, storms rising and passing, animals hunting and hiding. Inside, wrapped in the fragile armor of community, the group slept, trusting in the dawn to bring another chance, another story, another day lived together beneath the sheltering stone. The quiet of night held the cave in a gentle embrace, the embers' faint glow casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to breathe along with the sleeping forms. Even as sleep claimed most of the group, the responsibility of keeping watch passed silently from one adult to another, eyes adjusting to the darkness, ears straining for any sign of threat beyond the reach of firelight. It was a burden carried with pride, for the safety of all depended on vigilance, on the ability to sense the difference between the harmless rustle of leaves and the stealthy approach of something more dangerous. Every so often, the watcher would stand and stretch, moving quietly to the entrance to peer out at the world beyond, a world transformed by moonlight into silver and shadow, mysterious and beautiful. Occasionally, the soft snuffling of a wild animal could be heard, or the distant call of a predator on the hunt. In those moments, the watcher's grip would tighten on a nearby spear or club, muscles tensed in readiness, heart pounding until the danger faded back into the night. Inside, the cave was a tapestry of quiet life, a mother drawing a sleeping child closer, a pair of siblings sharing a blanket, an elder shifting in dreams haunted by faces from long ago. In sleep, the struggles and worries of the day faded, replaced by visions of sunlight on green grass, the sweet taste of berries, or the thrill of a chase through dappled woods. These dreams, both comforting and wild, reminded the group that hope and beauty persisted even in a world defined by uncertainty. Sometimes, the watcher found comfort in these sleeping forms, drawing courage from the simple sight of those they protected. The hours of darkness stretched on, marked only by the changing shape of the embers and the slow movement of stars overhead. Time passed in fits and starts, a nervous glance outside, a brief doze by the fire, a reassuring touch to make sure a child had not rolled too close to the cold stone wall. Each act, though small, was a quiet act of love, a promise renewed with every heartbeat that morning would come, and the group would see another dawn together. Eventually, the world outside began to change. The night air grew thinner, a faint breeze stirring the ashes, and the black sky faded to a softer, gentler gray. The watcher would rouse the next in line, whispering a few soft words, perhaps exchanging a smile or a tired nod. As one settled to rest, the other took up the vigil, eyes bright, with the knowledge that soon, the first bird would call, and the promise of a new day would touch the cave once more. Within the sheltering stone, life moved on, carried gently forward by hope, by habit, and by the unbroken chain of care that held everyone safe until the morning's light returned. As dawn crept gently over the horizon, a soft, silvery glow spilled into the cave, pushing back the remnants of darkness and waking the group from sleep's fragile hold. The morning was always a moment of gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of another night survived. The cave came alive with small, familiar sounds, the muffled stretch and yawn of a parent, the giggle of a child remembering a dream, the hushed whispers of adults quietly discussing the day ahead. There was a rhythm to these early hours, a practiced dance that set the tone for survival. Someone would prod the fire, coaxing new life from the cooling embers. Others would gather water from nearby, returning with carefully filled skins or hollowed stones, hands chilled and faces bright in the crisp air. Breakfast was simple, a few nuts or seeds, a morsel of dried meat, perhaps a rare sweet berry plucked from a hidden patch the day before. Every bite mattered, and the sharing of food was both necessity and ritual, a moment that bound the group in unspoken trust. As the group gathered near the cave mouth, the day's tasks were quietly assigned. Elders, drawing on years of knowledge, gave gentle direction. Who would hunt for fresh meat? Who would search for roots and greens? Who would remain behind to watch the youngest, or repair the tools so vital to the group's safety? These decisions, made with respect and care, reflected not just immediate needs, but the ever-present memory of past seasons. What had worked? What had failed? What dangers might be lurking just beyond the trees? The hunters prepared with practiced efficiency, checking the sharpness of flint knives, tying hides tightly around their shoulders, and exchanging silent nods before stepping out into the wild. Those who stayed behind took comfort in the tasks at hand, knowing that every chore, from boiling water to scraping a hide, was a thread in the fragile tapestry of life. The cave itself, cool and steady, stood watch over all, its walls marked by the art and memory of generations. Children played beneath the watchful eyes of elders, their laughter echoing off stone as they invented new games or listened, rapt, to lessons in tracking, gathering, or the careful making of tools. Sometimes, an elder would draw in the dust, illustrating a story from years past. A narrow escape, a great hunt, a celebration of plenty. These stories, part warning and part hope, were a way to prepare the youngest for what was to come, to give them the strength and wisdom they would need in the days ahead. As the sun rose higher, the chill faded from the air, replaced by the subtle warmth and the buzz of insects in the grass. The group, busy and purposeful, moved through the morning's work with quiet determination, each task a building block in the foundation of survival. And always, in the background, the promise of another evening spent together, another night held safe within the shelter of the cave, another chance to face the wild world as one. The sun climbed steadily through the morning sky, its rays filtering through leaves and warming the earth outside the cave. The forest beyond was alive with possibility and risk, a place where every sound, scent, and movement could mean hunger satisfied or danger narrowly avoided. Hunters moved with practiced quiet, following faint trails and the telltale signs of passing animals. The twist of a broken branch, the fresh imprint of hooves, the subtle change in the pattern of birdsong. Their eyes and ears were always alert, their bodies moving with the rhythm of experience handed down over countless seasons. Sometimes a sudden flurry of motion, a rabbit bolting from cover, the glimpse of a deer's white tail, would set hearts pounding, bodies tensed for pursuit or silence. Every success was earned, every failure a lesson, both remembered and shared in the stories that waited to be told by the evening fire. Gatherers worked in smaller groups, combing the forest floor for roots, greens, and berries, their baskets filling slowly as the day wore on. The elders taught the younger ones how to spot edible plants and avoid those that might bring sickness, pointing out the faint purple hue of a safe tuber or the bitter scent of a dangerous leaf. Sometimes, a patch of wild honey would be found, and the group would work together, carefully coaxing the golden treasure from a hollow tree while keeping wary eyes on angry bees. Each find, no matter how small, was greeted with excitement, a gift to be brought home and shared with all. Those who stayed behind at the cave worked just as steadily, cleaning and mending tools, tending the fire, or helping the youngest learn the skills of daily life. Children gathered around an elder to practice shaping clay, their small hands pressing and rolling, laughter ringing out as they compared their uneven creations. Others learned to twist plant fibers into cord, or to strike sparks from flint, each new skill a quiet victory. Even simple chores, sweeping the cave floor or fetching water, were lessons in patience, responsibility, and pride. The day's warmth brought a sense of ease, the world outside holding off its harshest challenges for a few precious hours. Rest came in short, treasured moments. An elder dozing in the sun, a child curled up with a favorite stone or stick, a parent watching the sky and thinking of those who were far away or lost to memory. Yet beneath the peace was always awareness, a readiness to move, to defend, to adapt. As the sun began its slow descent, the hunters and gatherers would return, their voices announcing success or sharing tales of narrow escape. The cave filled with energy once more, baskets and bundles set down, hugs and laughter mingling with tired sighs. Each person, no matter how weary, was welcomed home, their effort woven into the fabric of the group's survival. Evening preparations began anew, the circle of firelight drawing everyone close for another night of safety, stories, and rest. As the long day faded into evening, the group gathered once more around the fire, their faces lit by its golden glow, the air thick with the mingled scents of wood smoke and earth. The cave's entrance was dark now, the world outside hidden behind a veil of shadow, but inside, a gentle peace settled over the small community. The hunters laid out their prizes, perhaps a handful of birds, a few squirrels, or on fortunate days, a chunk of venison, while the gatherers poured out baskets of roots, greens, and a precious handful of berries found deep in the woods. Every item was met with murmurs of appreciation, a touch on the shoulder, or a quiet smile. The oldest members inspected the bounty, dividing it carefully, making sure that the youngest and frailest ate first and that nothing was wasted. Preparing the meal was a shared act, each person contributing in small ways. Children fetched water and stirred pots, elders added handfuls of herbs or root, and the younger adults tended the fire, adjusting the flames with practiced hands. Conversation was gentle, colored by the events of the day. A near miss with a startled boar, a clever trick for catching fish, the surprise of stumbling on a new patch of wild garlic. The youngest listened wide-eyed, learning with every word, their questions welcomed and answered with patience. Sometimes an elder would sing a quiet song, the melody as old as memory, echoing softly against the painted stone. The firelight flickered over the cave walls, illuminating images of animals, hunts, and hands, each mark a reminder that others had gathered here before, and that these lives, too, would leave their trace for those yet to come. The meal was eaten slowly, each bite savored, conversation pausing for moments of gratitude and reflection. Afterward, the group would settle into small clusters, some tending to minor injuries, scraped knees, a twisted ankle, others simply enjoying the warmth and company, hands clasped or heads resting on a loved one's shoulder. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, but within the cave, there was comfort and safety. Sleepiness crept in, children's eyelids drooping as parents hummed lullabies, adults speaking in softer tones, sharing hopes for tomorrow. One by one, bodies found places to rest, on woven mats, among furs, against the steady stone. A few stayed awake, taking up the quiet watch at the entrance, their senses tuned to the shifting night. The fire was banked for safety, the last voices faded, and in the hush that followed, the group slipped into sleep, hearts beating together in the ancient rhythm of survival, trust, and belonging beneath the shelter of the cave. Deep in the night, as embers cast faint orange halos on the cave walls, silence filled the shelter. The world outside was a mystery, alive with the secret activities of creatures and the soft breathing of wind through trees. For those assigned to the watch, the night was a time of gentle movement and listening, their senses sharpened by centuries of instinct. They shifted now and then, moving closer to the entrance, peering into the blackness, ears straining for the warning cries of animals or the approach of something unfamiliar. The fire was kept low but alive, the warmth a comfort, and the light a silent guardian. Inside, most slept fitfully, the events of the day settling in their bones, dreams flickering between memory and hope. Children, exhausted from play and chores, huddled close to parents, sometimes stirring with a whimper, only to be soothed by a gentle hand or the soft hum of an old song. Elders dozed in short stretches, waking easily if a sound broke the quiet. These older members, having seen many seasons come and go, carried the group's deepest memories. Sometimes, as they sat by the fire, their eyes grew distant, lost in the recollection of faces and places that time had faded. For them, every night was a reminder of all that had been endured and all that still might come. As the darkest hours wore on, those awake spoke in whispers, if at all, sometimes sharing a story too private for daylight, sometimes simply exchanging a reassuring touch. Their vigilance was not just for danger, it was an act of love, a promise kept to all who rested within the cave. The world beyond remained unpredictable, and so the group drew strength from each other and the routines that had become tradition. Sometimes, a watcher would notice the first faint blush of dawn and feel a wave of relief, knowing that another night had been kept at bay. The gradual return of light brought renewed energy, and those who had watched would quietly wake the next in line, passing on the silent duty with a nod. As people stirred and stretched, the cave once again filled with the gentle chaos of morning. Soft greetings, the quick gathering of embers, the shuffle of feet as children hurried to the mouth of the cave, eager to greet the new day. Each sunrise was a quiet victory, another page added to the ongoing story of their lives. The fire was fed, water fetched, and a simple meal prepared to begin the day's work. Some looked to the sky to read the weather, others checked tools or counted the food supplies, all moving with the practiced grace that came from a life deeply connected to the rhythms of nature. and to each other. In these rituals, hope endured, an unbroken chain carrying the group forward, together, into whatever challenges or blessings the world might bring. As the new day began, the cave was soon filled with purposeful activity, each member of the group falling into familiar roles that had been shaped by seasons of survival. Morning light spilled through the entrance, turning dew to silver and painting the faces of those who stepped outside. The world was fresh and full of promise, but everyone moved with the careful awareness that had been honed over generations. Hunters prepared quietly, checking their weapons and discussing among themselves which paths might yield the best results or where animals had last been spotted. A nod, a gesture, the briefest of words. These were all that was needed to convey plans and warnings. Before setting out, some paused to touch the painted figures on the cave wall, seeking a moment of luck or courage from ancestors whose stories lived in every brushstroke. Those who remained at the cave turned their focus to daily chores. Parents and elders organized the children, teaching them to gather sticks for the fire, sort edible roots, or help scrape animal skins. The youngest mimicked the adults, proudly carrying small loads or copying the motions of sharpening a stone, their laughter and chatter lending warmth to the cool morning air. Elders gave quiet instruction, their patience deep, as they passed on lessons about safety, kindness, and respect for both the land and one another. The morning's rhythm was broken only by the occasional visit from a wandering dog or the excited shouts of a child discovering something new, a bird's feather, a shiny stone, or a strange new plant. The discovery would be brought to the group, examined by experienced eyes, and added to the growing store of knowledge and memory. As the sun climbed higher, those who hunted and gathered ranged farther afield, their work carrying them through tangled woods and open meadows, across streams and up stony hillsides. Each find, whether a fresh spring, a patch of wild onions, or a glimpse of animal tracks, was a reason for hope, a sign that the land still provided. Sometimes the group would pause to rest in a clearing, sharing water and a quiet moment before returning to their tasks. Meanwhile, back at the cave, work was steady and unhurried. Clay was shaped into small pots, baskets repaired or woven anew, and old stories shared in the shade. Each act, whether simple or skilled, strengthened the ties that bound the group together. The hum of daily life was soothing, the hardships of the past set aside for a time, replaced by the comforting certainty that each person had a place, a purpose, and a home. By midday, all would return to the cave, bringing the fruits of their labor, food, water, new tools, and, above all, the satisfaction of another day lived side by side, facing the wild world as one. With the return of the gatherers and hunters, the midday hour became a time for rest and renewal, the cave filling with voices and laughter as the community came together once more. The heat outside pressed against the stone, but within their shelter, coolness and shade offered relief. Children played quietly in the background, their games echoing the day's work as they pretended to track animals or mimic the calls of birds. Their creativity was boundless. Small treasures found during the morning search quickly transformed into toys or symbols of imagined victories. Elders watched with gentle amusement, sometimes joining in the fun or sharing a story that blended wisdom with humor, passing on knowledge in a way that made learning a delight rather than a chore. As everyone settled down for the meal, the food was divided with care. Meat roasted over embers, greens and roots added to boiling water, wild berries passed hand to hand. Each bite was a gift, a reminder of the group's unity and the blessings that even a difficult land could provide. There was always time for gratitude, a pause to recognize not just what they had, but what they shared. Safety, company, and the certainty that, together, they could face whatever the world brought. After eating, the pace of life slowed. Some stretched out for a nap, their backs pressed against cool stone, while others used the quiet hours to mend baskets, sharpen blades, or prepare hides for use. A few adults sat at the cave's mouth, scanning the landscape, their eyes ever alert for signs of change. Clouds building on the horizon, the distant movement of animals, or an unfamiliar scent on the wind. These moments of stillness were both restful and necessary, giving minds and bodies time to recover, and offering space for reflection and hope. Sometimes, two friends would wander a little way from the cave, finding a place to sit and talk, or simply to listen to the wind in the grass. They might recall old memories, hunts from childhood, the faces of those no longer present, or the unexpected kindness of a stranger met on a journey. These quiet conversations stitched together the days and years, building trust and weaving the fabric of belonging even tighter. As the afternoon passed, the group slowly came back to life. New plans were made for the evening's chores, tools gathered, and songs hummed under breath as hands worked. The feeling of being part of something larger, of sharing not just the burdens, but also the joys of daily life, was a comfort as real as the fire's warmth. In the gentle routine of these hours, hearts grew lighter, the wounds of yesterday softened, and the group prepared together for whatever the rest of the day would bring, facing the future side by side, held close by the ancient shelter of the cave. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet, the group stirred with renewed purpose. Evening was a busy time, marked by a quiet urgency, as everyone pitched in to finish the day's work and prepare for the long hours ahead. Those who had spent the afternoon making repairs or gathering extra firewood now returned to the heart of the cave, adding their efforts to the communal stockpile. Hunters shared stories of the animals they'd seen or almost caught, their words laced with excitement, frustration, and humor. The children listened wide-eyed, sometimes acting out the most dramatic moments for the amusement of their elders. In the gentle bustle, food was once again prepared, a stew bubbling in a clay pot, meat roasted over the crackling fire, handfuls of greens and wild onions thrown in for flavor. Everyone had a role, from the smallest to the oldest. Parents taught their children how to stir the pot, test a spear's sharpness, or patch a tear in a hide. These lessons were simple, woven into daily life, and carried the weight of generations. As dusk deepened, the group gathered in a close circle. Faces glowed in the firelight, shadows shifting across the painted walls behind them, pictures of mammoths, birds, and handprints made by ancestors whose names were long forgotten, but whose spirit lived on in each story told. Elders often led the conversation, recounting the adventures and hardships of earlier times, or explaining why certain rituals were still followed, why a tool was made a certain way, or why it was important to leave an offering of food near the cave's entrance each night. The children's questions, sometimes practical, sometimes wonderfully strange, were welcomed, answered with patience and delight, ensuring that curiosity was never stifled but nurtured. These moments of learning and connection gave shape to the day's end, grounding everyone in the shared story of their people. As the night drew closer, the air cooled and a hush fell over the group. The sounds of the forest, owls calling, wind moving through the trees, became more pronounced, a gentle reminder that the world outside was never truly still. Someone might hum a song, its melody weaving through the firelight and wrapping the group in a feeling of comfort and security. The meal, though simple, tasted better for being shared, and the fire's warmth and the company of loved ones eased the weariness of muscles and minds. Finally, as stars began to appear overhead, the group prepared for sleep. Blankets were spread, embers banked, and a quiet watch was set. In the heart of the ancient cave, wrapped in the timeless rituals of survival and care, every member of the group surrendered to the peaceful darkness, trusting in each other, the wisdom of tradition, and the promise that another day would dawn. In the hush that followed the day's end, The ancient cave became a sanctuary of dreams and memory, the air alive with the faint scent of wood smoke and earth, the sound of quiet breathing echoing softly beneath the stone ceiling. The fire's last embers glowed, casting a gentle light over sleeping faces. Some turned toward each other, some tucked beneath furs, everyone softened by the peace of shared survival. Outside, night stretched vast and mysterious, but inside, the bonds of family and friendship formed a shelter as real and vital as any stone wall. The quiet rhythm of night watch continued, each adult taking a turn at the entrance, their eyes moving between the darkness beyond and the comfort within. These silent hours held their own kind of magic, the watchers' thoughts drifting between gratitude for the group's safety and hope for the days to come. Sometimes, as the fire dimmed, a story would be whispered, a memory of a lost friend, a tale of a hunt from childhood, or the gentle promise that, no matter what happened, they would face the future together. In these stories, old wisdom found new life, carried on the breath of those who remembered and cherished what had been learned. The cave, painted with the marks of countless hands, seemed to listen and hold every secret, every laugh, every sorrow and triumph. Through the night, the world outside continued its ancient patterns. Wolves howled at the moon, rain fell softly in the distance, and the river ran quietly, unchanged by the passing of seasons. Yet for those within, the darkness was not a thing to be feared, but a time to rest, to heal, and to gather strength. Dreams rose and fell like gentle waves, a vision of summer sunlight, a memory of a parent's embrace, a hope for a fruitful hunt, or a new friend. Each person's dreams were different, yet all were woven together by the quiet certainty that they belonged, that together they could endure whatever the world brought. As the faintest hint of dawn touched the sky, those on watch would rouse the others gently, careful not to startle the youngest. The day began anew with soft voices, stretching limbs, and the slow rekindling of the fire. The cave filled once again with the promise of life, plans for hunting and gathering, laughter at a shared joke, the first bite of a simple meal. In this ancient rhythm, there was comfort, purpose, and hope. For the people of the cave, each sunrise was both an ending and a beginning, a reminder that life's greatest treasure was not in what they owned, but in what they shared. So the story continued, day after day, night after night, shaped by love, by courage, and by the unbroken thread of family, holding close to the lessons of the past and facing the mystery of the future together.